and today we're going to talk about the world of automated testing. Before we start, we just got a couple of slides about Cooper Software for those of you who have not worked with us before we go into the session itself. The session itself will probably take around 20 minutes of slides and probably some questions at the end. So in terms of Cooper Software, we are 1 year shy of our 20-year anniversary. So founded in 2005 by Frank Cooper, who's still around. And over those years, we've worked on probably around 300 or so projects with a large majority of UK IFS customers. We got our Silver Partner Award in 2009 and our Gold Partner Award in 2019. We're a Proud Spirit Award winner 2 years in a row, 21 and 22. And we were the first UK partner to join Partner Success in 2019. So very, very busy 20 years. More recently, over the past couple of years, finally got on the IFS cloud train. So in 2023, we started on 6 IFS cloud upgrades and implementation projects. Pleased to say, already this year, we have 2 live cloud customers, which is a great achievement for us. And we currently have 4 upgrades stroke implementation projects in flight. In terms of Cooper Software, we'll go on to the next slide. The 3 rings represent our 3 areas of kind of full life cycle coverage of IFS, which is consulting, support, and products. Consulting is everything to do with implementations and upgrades. So that is your IFS from start to finish, bringing in anything from IFS 7, 8, 9, 10 to cloud. Oh, they've gone back.
Right.
Sorry. Support, we have a large support team dealing with 24/7 support, managed support for customers around day-to-day issues with IFS, training, change requests, customizations, configurations, and a kind of backbone support for any implementation upgrade project as well. And we also have our products that complement IFS. So we have our Making Tax Digital, which many of our customers have. We have our Track software and also our Acquire software. But we also provide a lot of ad hoc solutions for customers outside of IFS as well. I wanted to just give a quick introduction to the session and kind of my experience. So as I said, I'm a senior account manager here at Cooper Software. I've been here now 8 years myself. And I'm very, very aware that automated testing is really pivotal and it has a real profound impact on the success of any solution. And with the 8 years experience I have myself, and including 5 years on the service desk, I've seen really firsthand the repercussions of inadequate testing. Countless implementations and upgrades have taught Cooper one recurring lesson, that the necessity of thorough testing. Because testing really is the linchpin of any IFS implementation or upgrades. Any testing plan or strategy really needs to ensure it aligns seamlessly with the core business processes, and of course, any configurations and modifications outside of core IFS code. What Cooper Software's automated testing service addresses is those evolving needs of any testing processes, and at the same time, it mitigates risks, especially considering the increased likelihood of failure when relying solely on manual testing. Asking users to manually perform all testing poses risk of oversight and human error. And again, I've seen this myself firsthand on many a busy go live on the service desk. And this is really where automated testing becomes invaluable, offering consistency, accuracy, and comprehensive coverage. A robust test strategy is paramount, guided design, ensuring clarity on testing objectives and responsibilities. It involves defining scope, prioritizing processes, and establishing defect management protocols. Effort estimation is crucial with any testing strategy, categorizing processes by complexity for precise planning. Leveraging Cooper Software's expertise streamlines any IFS implementation or upgrade testing. From strategy design to execution, we ensure a flawless project rollout informed by many years, as I said, of experience and lessons learned. So I don't want to tread on Chris's toes anymore. That's it from me. I'll hand you over now to Chris, who, as I said, is our head of testing at Cooper Software. Chris will now dive deeper into what our automated testing services can deliver for our customers. And if anyone wants to follow up on anything else today, we have some question time at the end, and please don't hesitate to get in touch after this webinar. So thanks for joining. Let's explore the world of automated testing.
Thanks, Lee. So just a quick introduction of myself and what I do at Cooper Software. So I'm Chris Binmore. My role is the head of testing at Cooper, and basically that covers two sort of facets. So the first side is working with our customers to ensure that helping them to define their testing. Testing an implementation or an upgrade is a very customer-led thing, and it's something that we've seen that a lot of customers do need a bit of help with, as it is a very sort of excuse me, a very niche sort of area that not everyone will have expertise in. And the other side of it is I work on Cooper's internal testing. So anything that the Cooper provides in terms of a CRIM or a modification and things like that, then that will go through our sort of stringent test processes. So that's kind of my role. Been with Cooper for a couple of years. Prior to that, I was the test manager at Babcock, so I used to look after all of their applications in terms of testing on the marine part of their business, so everything that covers off refitting a warship or a nuclear submarine. So I have a lot of experience in risk-based testing. So with that in mind, let's sort of dive in and go through it. So the first thing is what is test automation? So obviously, as the name suggests, automation testing just takes software testing activities that we do manually and executes them via a tool set or a framework. It's basically something that runs a predefined pattern of testing. What that does is it takes pressure off people doing manual testing, allows them to focus on higher value tasks such as exploratory testing and things like that, and it takes over the repetitive time consuming stuff such as regression testing, which obviously with IFS Cloud regular updates, that's now going to become a more massive thing in the IFS world, and it's basically just designed to achieve testing within the shorter timelines and give you a greater accuracy of results. Significance of automated testing in IFS Cloud. So obviously, on previous versions of IFS, you would do your testing once every sort of 4 or 5 years when you were looking to do your big upgrades. Now it's potentially you could do it every month if you wanted to, or every 6 months. And obviously, with the release cadence of a feature release every 6 months and monthly service updates, there is now scope to be doing testing a lot more at a lot smaller intervals. Obviously, IFS provide early visibility of what's in those roadmaps. So this gives you time to think about what is actually coming up in those releases. Do you want to take it? How does it affect you? So this means you can look at how you're affected. You can review your tests that you've currently got, see if you need to write new ones for new features, and then prioritize those tests, and then obviously execute and review the results. But the big thing to take away here is testing is now a continuous cycle as opposed to being a big bang every sort of few years. Benefits of test automation. Well, a lot of these will probably be obvious to people. So saving costs. So you're cutting down the time it takes. You're freeing up your SMEs to let them do the more nuanced sort of testing that they need to do, as opposed to all the time-consuming testing. Faster feedback loop. So you get your results back much quicker. So potentially you could have a 2-week window of manual testing, and it's not until you finish that 2 weeks that you realize where you are in terms of how the testing's gone. This obviously gives you much quicker results. Allows you to allocate your resources better. So like I say, it frees up the SMEs to go and do the more important things. So whether that's writing new tests for new features, or looking at the more sort of the nuanced tests that really do require their inner knowledge of that area of IFS. Obviously, the big one, it detects bugs a lot earlier, so how many bugs are how many bugs are in your new update, which allows you to then plan and accommodate what you're going to do in terms of fixes and things like that. And it maximizes your return on investment. So just the whole speed thing, it just ensures that you are doing your testing quicker, which means you can then accept your update into production quicker, which means you can then take advantage of new features and things like that a lot quicker. Okay. So testing an implementation or an upgrade is a massive undertaking. Obviously, there's multiple functional areas, configurations, reports, interfaces, modifications, and they've all got varying degrees of complexity that need to be tested and accepted. You know, it's you're looking at business processes, you're looking at customizations, you're looking at reports, you're looking at interfaces, you're looking at all of these different things that involve lots of different people. So the only way to manage that is to have a careful strategy and planning to make sure you're testing the right things at the right time with the right people. Okay. Common issues that we've seen, and Lee touched on this in his introduction. You know, inadequate testing of your system will be tested, which means once you go live or goes into production, you get issues. Testing takes much longer than expected, so this is one we see a lot, is where organizations don't define an exit criteria, or they define an exit criteria that is unachievable. So things like all tests must pass. You know, when we do that, there's never an end point to testing. It'll just keep going on and on and on. No repeatable test deliverables. So this kind of goes back to the original big bang of sort of doing the testing. You know, a lot of organizations will just look at it and go, well, look, we'll just get it done because we don't have to worry about it again for another few years. That's not simply going to not be the case with IFS Cloud. So, you know, you don't end up with anything at the end of it that you can rerun when you do take an update, and you end up repeating test activities from scratch. And then the one that we see all the time, testing time is cut. So, you know, it's always the first thing that gets removed from when a plan or a schedule is slipping. You know, so with careful strategy and planning, you know, this would enable that your testing time is not cut because you're doing everything to schedule. Why is testing necessary? Well, you know, some of those headlines will all be familiar with, but you know, it results in, you know, poor software results in financial loss. It results in wasted time, loss of reputation, and injury or death if it's a you know, safety control system feature. And those sort of aspects of risk should be reflected in how much time and effort you're putting into those areas. So an example, when I was at Babcock, we used to have to test the dosimetry control system, which was the system that monitored radiation when people were working on nuclear submarines in and around the reactor. Obviously, that got a hell of a lot more testing than the cake app where people could go and order buns for their birthday. So, you know, that is the sort of, you know, well, that's where the risk aspect comes into it. But I mean, some of these headlines, if you're in the UK, these will be very familiar. Air traffic control, you know, dodgy flight plan, brought everything to a standstill. And TSB, you know, when they split from Lloyd's, you know, they did a very poor job of moving over to their own IT systems, which resulted in a £50 million fine. Just moving on to defects. So defects themselves, they cost obviously businesses time and money. But what this is trying to demonstrate is the fact is that the further in the process that a defect gets, the more it costs to fix. So something in a requirements phase will probably only need one or two people to just sort of say, oh, well, that's wrong, let's just correct that. Once it's in construction, you're then talking about, you know, developers and things like that being involved, and testers. So you've now got the cost of those. And then obviously once it's gone into production, that is then, you know, you're involving now a support desk, you know, account management, all those sorts of things. So it just costs that much more. So the you know, the idea is obviously to catch defects as early as possible, because that is where they are at their cheapest. So what is acceptance testing? So I mean, I won't read the ISTQB definition of it because I'd like some people to be awake at the end of this, but basically acceptance testing is validating a system's readiness for deployment and its use by its customers. So that is simply what we're doing when we're doing our testing of an upgrade or an implementation. So acceptance testing is a form of testing. It's one of the 4 levels of testing. So it follows a cut down version of the sort of fundamental test process. So The fundamental test process has several stages to it, and what we've done is just strip these out to the ones that are relevant to acceptance testing. So that is planning, design, execution, and completion. So during the planning phase, so this is where we define our strategy. We work out how many test phases or cycles we're going to do, roles and responsibilities, test environments. Do we need any require support from other teams? And test plans are created. This is usually this is what we tend to do. You can do this pretty much as soon as the scope tool is produced. So if you've got a scope tool output, this is where you can start putting that together, working out who's going to be involved. At this point, you don't have to name people, but you need to know what the roles and responsibilities are going to be. You can talk about environments and things like that. So design phase. So this is when we're starting to look at designing our tests. So we're looking at our business scenarios. What do we need to check? What test data do we need for those? Traceability matrix between the requirements and the test is created. So this is an important one that I often see get missed off is, we have a whole suite of tests, and where are we defining what that functionality that is covering off? How do we know that we've got enough tests for our functionality? And appropriate user access is requested and approved. Execution. So this is covering the actual running of the test. So we execute the tests, we raise our defects. Defects are triaged and prioritized by appropriate teams. So things go back to IFS, things go back to the partner. And then once they're all resolved, defect retesting takes place on the next phase. And then completion. So this is a phase that I often don't really see too much happening in. And this is where we complete our test closure report. So this is looking at our exit criteria and demonstrating that we have hit that. Or if we haven't hit that, explaining why we haven't hit that and what is our next steps going to be. Are we going to go back and retest, or are we now going to go live or push this into production with the risks associated that we know that we haven't hit our exit criteria? With all of the strategy and the planning, we should know exactly what we've not done. So it should make that decision a lot easier and a lot more less unknown. And then a go no go decision is discussed and recommended. So like I say, if we've hit exit criteria, then that's a pretty sort of straightforward thing. Just moving on to what a test strategy is. So it's a set of guiding principles that determine test design, and it regulates how our testing process will be done. It's there to provide a systematic approach to the process to ensure that you've got quality, traceability, reliability, and better planning of your test activities. It covers off the what, who, where, why, and how of testing. So once you start testing, you don't get any hidden surprises. Some of the things, the standout things that a test strategy should include is the overall scope of the project. This includes listing, so this will be listing everything that's in the scope, but more often than not, more importantly, what's not in scope. Roles and responsibilities, risks and risk management. A risk that I always see, and I totally understand it, is that people that are doing the testing have a full-time job. So a big risk is always their time, because often it's very difficult to free them up from their day-to-day role to do the testing. Defect management process, so making sure that this process is clearly defined before we start. So if you get a bug, what do you do? What information do you capture? Who does it get sent to? Who's doing the triaging? All of these things, that we define early on make it so much easier when we're actually into our testing phase. Types of testing to be undertaken. So this is dependent on where you're coming from and where you're trying to get to. So types of testing, so it's not just always, the functional side of it, does X equal X? You've got to look at things like usability, performance, accessibility. If you're an international company and you're in various countries, localization, all of these things might be important to you. So it's at this point we need to call those out and say we also need to do these types of testing. And then the test phases. So are we having a SAT? Are we having 2 SATs? Are we having, or just an ORT? It's defining that and saying, right, okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay. So once we've got our strategy, we can go on to a plan. So the plan is now the details. So now we're getting into the sort of nitty gritty of it. And it describes the objectives, the schedule, estimation, deliverable, and resources that we need to do the plan. So it helps us understand how much effort we need to do to validate the quality of the application under test. And it's basically a blueprint that allows us to define our process, which is then monitored and controlled. So it's not just a, we've got all of our testing right, everyone go off and run it, come back to me when you're done. It's monitored, it's controlled by someone. If things are going off track, then we can look to get them back on track. But what the test plan includes is the scope of what is in that test plan. So now we're looking at features, we're looking at business scenarios, we're looking at individual bits that we're going to test. So we've gone from a strategy which is more high level to say, yeah, we've got all of these sort of modules that we need to test, but now we're getting into it and saying, okay, now we're testing posting controls, we're testing financial things, stuff like that. Here we define who's performing the testing. So this is where we start putting names in seats and saying, right, they're going to be doing certain tests. A schedule, so this is obviously going to be based off of the amount of effort we need to put in, or the amount of tests we've got and the amount of people we have. Test deliverables, so what are we producing out the back of this plan? So at the very least, I would hope there would be test cases and a test exit report. The entry and exit criteria of each plan, so this is obviously something I've touched on, but it's something I very rarely see, and making sure that we've got clearly defined criteria that says this needs to be in place for us to start testing, and this needs to be completed for us to exit testing. Risks and risk management, again, sort of covered off that, but that is now the risks to the plan, so this individual plan. Test environment specifics, so what environment are we going to test in? What third parties do we need? Do we need any hardware? What printers do we need? Things like that, and just making sure that we've got everything in the environment that we're using. And if we haven't, then we need to mitigate that risk. And then any sort of test tools are going to be used. So anything from recording tests to running tests. And then finally is the test cases. So test case is just the set of actions that you need to execute to verify that bit of functionality. It contains steps, data, preconditions, postconditions, and variables and conditions. And it's just it's just a set of steps that you run through to compare at the start to the actual results, and what you're expecting is what you're getting. Bad or vague test cases is something that I see quite a lot. These can cause massive inefficiencies in the test process. We had a customer last year when I was going through their test with them. We got to their sort of stock taking process, and their stock taking test was literally a line that just said do stock take. When I questioned them on that, they said, well, that's fine because old Jim, who always does our stock take, he knows the process inside out, so he doesn't have to write it down. And I pointed out, well, what if he's not in? What if you want someone else to do it? He was quite a senior level, and it's like, when it comes to testing, do you want that person doing that, taking the time out from the business to do that when you could have somebody else doing it? But the key here is that you have to have your tests written to a good level to allow a level of autonomy, and this allows you then to assess those test cases for automation candidates. So when it comes to tests for automation, they need to be very specific. There can't be any vagaries, there can't be any assumed information in them. They need to be very specific in what it is you want the automation framework to do. So just onto the final slide then. So considerations when it comes to automation. And this is the bit that I can't really stress enough is you need to have that strategy, the plans, and the detailed test cases. If you try and do automation without these things, it will not succeed. I've seen it numerous times. Everybody gets excited about automation, thinking it's the silver bullet that will save them thousands of pounds, and it has the potential to, but only if you plan it correctly. And if you build your house on the pile of sand, then it will invariably fall down. So automation tests themselves, automation works best where the task is something's going to be repeated. It's going to save you some time. The requirements, the test or the task are pretty low risk and unlikely to change. So if you think about your sort of core processes, Test is subject to human error, so something that people often get wrong. It's time consuming and it's repetitive. Those are the sort of best things that we look at when assessing tests for automation. We do also have a sort of little formula that we can use that will work out sort of return on investment, things like that. But automation, you can't automate everything. So automated testing doesn't work very well in highly complex processes. New functionality that's changing constantly. User experience tests, so a computer or a framework or a tool set cannot tell you whether or not the user is enjoying doing what they're doing or how the program is running. Low return on investment tests, so you may have a test that is absolutely 100% critical to your business, but it only gets run twice a year and it takes someone half an hour to do it manually. And installation and setup testing, that is always something that you need a human there to make sure that invariably when it goes wrong, they're there to fix it. So that's the end of the slideshow.
Lovely, thanks, Chris. Well done. So we now have a chance for you to ask some questions. So on the Q&A section on this call, you can ask questions. So if you type away now any questions, then I shall ask them of Chris and Lee shortly. But just before, to give you a chance to do that, let me do a little bit of an introduction to myself. So I'm Amanda. I'm the manager of the IFS user group, and we're really very grateful to Lee and Chris and Cooper Software for preparing and presenting this event for us today. So I have got one question and I shall ask that for you in a moment. So yes, we want to thank them very much to Lee and to Chris and to Cooper Software. We really appreciate their continued and enthusiastic support and involvement with the user group. If anyone's watching today has a subject they would be happy to share with other IFS customers, please do let me know, because some of our most popular events are those where a customer is presenting. So let's have a quick look and see if we've got any more questions, and I shall start asking away. Okay, so first question we've got, if we've already started a project, can we still look at implementing automated testing, or does it have to be agreed at the start of the project?
You absolutely can look at it, regardless of where you are in your implementation, even if you've gone live. Ideally, obviously the best place to start is in an ideal world, start at the start with the test strategy being done just after the scope tool's been done. But you can start anywhere basically. So you can look at what you've got in terms of tests. You can start to prioritize those. You can start to look at their criticality, and then you can start to assess them and say, okay, if we wanted to automate these, which are the ones we would do. And then once you've got that, then you start to assess the quality of the tests. Would somebody be able to sit down and follow this test and be able to automate it without any intervention from whoever wrote it, sort of thing. So you absolutely can. There's no reason that you can't, and there's no good time to start like the present.
Okay. And have you got any evidence of the time saved or other efficiency gains when doing automated testing?
Yeah, so a really good example of this would be our MTD solution. So recently we relaunched our MTD solution or launched our latest version of it. So as we were going through the development process for that, I was involved in that. And what we did was automate the tests that we were running, that I was running manually. And these are now in our Azure DevOps instance, and these now run as part of the build. So every time the developers run a build, all of our automated tests kick off. And if any of the tests fail, then the build doesn't pass, which means it doesn't get passed to me. So what that did in terms of efficiencies and time saving is, each major sort of version that the guys were giving to me, I'd have to go through a regression pack of about 25 to 30 tests to make sure that they'd not broken anything. This was probably taking me about a day. Whereas now, when they run a build, it will automatically run all of those tests. That will probably take about half an hour. But not only will it take only half an hour, it will run it against Chrome, it will run it against Firefox, it will run it against Safari. So it runs it across multiple configurations, which, you know, again would take me a lot longer. So that is a prime example of how we save time and efficiencies. So we've gone from a day to half an hour. And I don't get it and get frustrated when it comes to being stuff's broken.
Okay, thank you. Is it possible to have a copy of the slides after the presentation? I haven't checked with the gentleman, I think it is. And what we'll do is we'll actually add it onto our website alongside the video of this event, so that you can share it with your colleagues as well as having watched it yourself. So we'll do that as soon as possible after the event finishes. Then where and how can Cooper software help with automated testing?
Yep, so we can help across the whole process, basically. So we can work with you to define a strategy if you've not got one. You know, we can start at the start, or if you've got tests that you think you want automated, then we can provide that service. Obviously, there's a whole assessment piece that needs to be done, and there needs to be some work to make sure that those tests are able to be automated. So, you know, we would need to go through and work with you to do it, but we can help in like I say, the sort of cradle to grave part of the process anywhere that we would need to help.
Okay, thank you. If you wouldn't allow a non-expert or an external tester to complete the test, then you haven't defined it enough for automated testing, question mark. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I would probably say then it depends on the knowledge of the person that is doing the automation. So if the person doing the automation is trying to follow a test and there is a lot of say preconditions that need to be set up, so needs to have a specific company, needs to have, you know, certain data in place, and they're trying to run the test without that and it's failing and things like that, then the test probably needs a bit of work. I think certainly as we get into the cadence of releases with cloud, you know, a lot of companies will look to move the testing from the higher paid SMEs, perhaps move it down a bit and get other people running it. And certainly if you're going to be running tests like that, then you need them to be a bit more explicit and a bit more defined. So I think it depends on the knowledge of the person doing the automation, but it's always a great start if anyone can pick it up. You know, that's a perfect candidate for automation. You know, the way I write my test is always with one eye on getting hit by a bus tomorrow. So if I do, someone else can carry on.
And what software do you use to automate tests?
So we use a coded solution. So just to touch on it, there's two types of test automation tools. There's coded and there's non-coded. So non-coded is usually sort of click and record, which is great for people that don't have any code knowledge. You can get tests out of it really quick, you know, and it enables you to allow non-technical people to do it. But the problem is once you've got a lot of tests, they become very difficult to maintain, and often the license fees for a decent sort of click and record system is astronomical. So we use a coded solution, so which means we own the code. The solution we use also gives us a bit of a click and record aspect to it, so we can build the sort of framework of our test and then refactor it using standard coding practices, which means that, you know, they fit in with our coding practices from Cooper software. We can version control everything. We can, you know, do all of that. We can spin it up whenever we want. So yeah, so it's an off-the-shelf tool, but it is a coded solution, so it does need a bit of development experience to run it. But like I say, it does also have the record and playback ability, so we can get the bulk of the work done by non-technical people.
Thank you. And is this limited to IFS Cloud only, or can it also be used in IFS 10 EE?
It is limited to cloud at the moment. We sort of made the decision that obviously with cloud going completely web-based, that's where we would focus our automation efforts. When I was at Babcock, we did automate apps 9, and I can honestly say it was one of the most hellish projects on the planet, and it also cost Babcock a lot of money to do because it was so complex to do, and we really struggled to find any tools that could do apps 9. So we ended up employing someone to write a completely bespoke framework, which was great for him because he's got a job for life now. But yeah, so it is only cloud.
Thank you. And how much longer does it take to automate the test than just manually run it the first time?
I'm going to assume that means the execution of it. So so if I take, for example, a test that we have on our IFS cloud, so it basically what the test does is just goes in and creates customer order. So that probably took me about an hour to automate. Now that would take, I don't know, say 5 minutes to create a customer order. Now when that runs, that creates it in 7-8 seconds. So that's, you know, if I run that, say 30 times, I've already saved the amount of money it took me to write that.
Okay, thank you. And can you outline the complexities of building an automated framework, the effort and resource required, how long roughly to build the automation tools to be used, planning, how far in advance to start automation planning?
Okay, it is a big challenge. You know, it's not something to be taken lightly. And like I say, like I was touching on with coded and non-coded, you need to look at who's going to be doing your automation. So if you're looking at things like consultants and things like that, then you probably want a non-coded solution. Obviously, at Cooper, we have our own development team. So the tool we use supports multiple languages. So if I need them to write something, so they write predominantly in .NET, then I can get them to do that. I tend to use JavaScript. But it's yeah. So once we did that, it's then about assessing what tools you want. What is your need? So we went to market and we went through quite a few before we settled on the one we actually wanted to use. Then there was a whole proof of concept phase. So this is where we started using MTD as our first sort of proof of concept, and then moved on. Once we realized that we got to grips with it, we then moved onto cloud. So it's very dependent on your business. It's hard to say how much effort and how much time it would take, because it's very difficult to know what is in place at the moment at your organization. But it's a big undertaking, and there certainly seems to be a lot of companies now offering non-coded solutions. So there's obviously a fair amount of money in it. So even when you think, okay, I'll have a non-coded solution, there doesn't seem to be an industry standard one.